أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us recognize the truth and to help us follow it and to help us recognize the falsehood and to help us avoid it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the best of our deeds, the last ones that we do, and the best of our days, the day that we shall meet Him. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wallahi, a small thought before we start. There was some argument about a specific leader. I'm not going to get into that, even though probably most of you know who I'm talking about, so as not to get into actually a tangent. But basically, there's a Muslim leader that basically some people have some hope in, and some people are opposing. And there was a post actually by one of a very dear brother, a brother that's very dear to me that I've known for many, many years. And he made the comment basically that, how come he doesn't have the path or the caliber, something like that, the caliber of Omar alayhi ridwanullah, or Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. We need somebody as wise as Abu Bakr and as courageous as Khalid, or something like that. And I told him, this is impossible. This will never happen. In other words, if you're expecting someone like Omar alayhi ridwanullah or Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, this will never happen. This example will not be repeated. When the Prophet, especially when you hear the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, praising them so much saying that nobody will be like them. For example, when the Prophet said, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Turjuman al-Quran, is the interpreter of the Quran, which means nobody will know about the Quran as much as Abdullah ibn Abbas. When he says that, in my ummah, the one that knows about halal and haram the most is Ubay ibn Ka'b, means nobody will know as much as he did. When the Prophet, when he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that if the belief of the whole ummah is weighed against that of Abu Bakr will tip the balance, meaning Abu Bakr will never happen again. And I was telling him that basically that these examples will not be repeated. And he said to me, maybe jokingly, he said that, I've known you for many years and hearing you talking about Omar, we feel that this is the way everybody should be. And I think above all of what I mentioned was the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. If I'm saying that these examples will not be repeated, means more so for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. I mean, obviously the Prophet will not be repeated. Why do we study his biography? Why do we study Omar and Abu Bakr and Uthman alayhim ridwanullah and Ali? Well, to know them and to connect with them, jazakallah khair, and to learn how to love them. That's a really an important thing. Because the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, first of all, told us that on the day of judgment, you'll be with those that you love. So if you learn about them, subhanAllah, it is easy to love them. I mean, you hardly find any, especially among the brothers, any brother who doesn't love Omar. Of course, everybody likes Omar. Or anyone that doesn't love Khadija, for example. Or Abu Bakr, or obviously the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So one of the benefits is to learn them. But the other thing is to aim for them. To take them as an example, but being realistic in the expectation. To take the principles that they followed and follow the principles. But not to duplicate these great giants. These giants will not be duplicated. Umar will never happen again. But again, you can learn from his path. You can learn from his path and try to follow his example. His generosity, his kindness despite his strictness, alayhi ridwanullah. His justice, his mercy, despite his toughness. And we learn the balance of the personality, so we take the principles. And the same thing when we learn about the seerah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, it is not to duplicate al-Medina. Medina will not be duplicated. As the Prophet himself said, the best of the generations is mine, followed by the next, followed by the next. Or the other one, it says, it will be a prophethood, and then khilafah based on prophethood, and on and on. But what we take from that is the principles that the Prophet ﷺ followed, and we base our actions on that. Not because if you're going to actually target a specific reality, you have to have all the other factors that bring about the reality. And the factors that brought about the reality of Medina were the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba and the international scene at that time, where we have basically the Arabian Peninsula outside the influence of all the other superpowers. This will bring about the example of Medina back. But you can take it as an example or as something to follow by taking the principles on which the Prophet built on, and we built on that. That's why we do not aim or... It would be great to have someone like Omar. I mean, of course, I'm not saying that this is something bad. We all wish to have someone like Omar, like Sumayya, like all these great people. But the fact is, these will not happen again. This will not be duplicated. But this is not to say that we're hopeless. No, because if you look actually through history, we've had great people actually that were of a caliber comparable to that of the Sahaba alayhim ridwanullah. When you look, for example, at Abu Hanifa, the great mujtahid, Abu Hanifa, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Ibn Taymiyyah, of course, al-Shafi'i, and all the other great people, and we have many of them, Salah ad-Din, al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam, and all these great people, they did achieve a comparable caliber. But to say, for example, that the minimal acceptable example or caliber is Salah ad-Din, this is stretching it too far. We wish to have someone like Salah ad-Din. That's why we, like somebody said, that this religion is realistically ideal. So we aim for something for perfection, but in a realistic way, knowing what to expect. That nobody's infallible, nobody can do everything perfectly. And if the Prophet ﷺ took 13 years in preparation and even beyond that to establish the environment of Medina, means it's going to take anyone, no matter how great, after the Prophet much longer than that. And a change can only happen gradually, especially if you have a corrupted society where the corruption has lasted not for tens of years, probably for hundreds of years. This will not change like that, within days. That's why the approach of gradual or, trying our best, but being realistic in our expectation is something good. So back to Omar alayhi ridwanullah. Where did we stop last time? What's the last thing that we covered? That was like 2 months ago. The last thing that we covered was the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, if you remember, right? Al-Qadisiyah under the leadership, which was a great victory led by Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas alayhi ridwanullah, where basically the Muslims defeated, it was the first and biggest defeat of the Persian Empire. SubhanAllah, really amazing. We're talking now about the conquest of the Persian Empire, but at the same time, the conquest of the Roman Empire was taking place. So anyway, the Muslims were fighting on both fronts. They were fighting the two superpowers at that time. And keep in mind, what that started with. It started with the Prophet ﷺ and a few people basically in an ignorant society, backward society, nothing, much advanced in there. People that are Bedouin, like, Rabi'i ibn Amr, this was described, people like that, but then suddenly actually conquering the whole world. And here we're talking, by the way, about the 14th year after 15 years after the Hijrah, the migration. So the whole thing was like within 20 years, all of that actually happened. From few individuals, I'm talking about after the migration in Medina, until actually becoming the major actually power in the whole world. So after the defeat of Al-Qadisiyah, then they were given the command to start actually going further. If you remember in the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah that Rustum, who was basically the army commander or the general commander of the Persian forces, was killed also by the end of the battle. And the general emperor or the big leader of the Persian Empire was Yazdajerd, if you remember. We talked about how he came into power after basically all of the males in his family were assassinated and he was hidden, the whole story that we covered actually last time. So Yazdajerd, after the defeat of Al-Qadisiyah, he ran toward the capital of the Persian Empire at that time, which was Al-Madain. And Al-Madain is on the bank of the river of Dijla, the Diglet River. And it has like two parts, one on the western bank and one on the eastern bank. But that's really where the capital of the Persian Empire was located. So he ran actually toward that. And the Muslims kept on marching from Al-Qadisiyah toward Al-Madain, which was the capital of the Persian Empire. And they were able to take over the western part of Al-Madain without any fighting. Basically because all of the Yazdajerd and his forces, they ran to the eastern bank part of Al-Madain, where his castle was located, and this was called Al-Qasr al-Abyad, the White Castle. And this was like the big castle, which was the symbol of the might of Kisra. So Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas alayhi ridwanullah, he sent a group of 60 people, and he asked them to cross the river to go attack the other side of Al-Madain, to go basically to following the Persians. And after these 60 crossed the river, and 60, it wasn't that difficult, the number was actually small, but they were faced with a huge army, from the Persian Empire. And Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas alayhi ridwanullah, of course, he was concerned that if we don't send any support for these 60s, they will be decimated, they will be finished. That's when he gave the command of the whole army to cross the river. You can imagine a whole army crossing the river, swimming and otherwise on whatever they had, including with the weapons and the provisions, and all of them actually were able to cross. Not a single one actually died, and not a single one actually was lost. They said one person actually was about to drown, but Al-Qa'qa' ibn Amr al-Tamimi alayhi ridwanullah went back and he saved them and he brought them out. And basically very easily, Yazdajard also he kept on running away further and further, and with the little forces that were left, then at that time the Muslims actually entered Al-Mada'in, the capital of Persia at that time, very easily. And they entered the major white castle of Persia, and they converted it into a masjid. And for the first time, they established salat actually in Al-Mada'in, in the place that used to be the very castle of Kisra. And Sa'd ibn Waqqas alayhi ridwanullah entered Al-Mada'in reciting كم تركوا من جنات وعيون وزروع ومقام كريم ونعمة كانوا فيها فاكهين كذلك وأورثناها قوما آخرين. That is saying that how many gardens and palaces have they left behind, and they were enjoying it, and then so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given it to other people. And the first Jum'ah was prayed in Al-Mada'in, then this was in Safar, the month of Safar, the year 16 after the migration. And all the booties, as was normally the case, as established in Surah Al-Anfal, were to be distributed, or four-fifths of the booties were to be divided among the army, and 1/5 was to be sent back to the leader. And that's what Sa'd alayhi ridwanullah, he sent back 1/5 of all the booties back to Al-Madinah. Not only that, but whenever he found anything unusual, that he would send it back to Omar as a gift to the people of Medina. And among these things that he had sent was a huge carpet. They said like 60 by 60 meters. It's a huge thing. And it says that with so much, so much gold threads and whatnot, that they used to use it as a place to sit when it's cold. And they cut it into pieces. Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh said that I had a piece, which was my share, a small piece. And he said it was not even the best piece among the rest. And I sold it for 20,000 dinar. So you can imagine how extravagant that was. But interestingly, among the things that Sa'd sent back to Omar ibn Khattab were the 2 bracelets of Kisra, the 2 bangles of Kisra. And he remembered the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ to Suraqa ibn Malik, and he called everybody, and he brought Suraqa before everybody, and he said, Ya Suraqa, tell us what the Prophet ﷺ told you when you were going after him when he migrated to Medina. And he said, I was going after him. That's before, of course, Suraqa became Muslim. I was going after him, and everybody, the whole world was chasing the Prophet ﷺ. I was going after him, and the Prophet ﷺ told me something that blew my mind at that time. That was very strange. He told me that, Ya Suraqa, how do you feel about wearing the 2 bracelets of Kisra? I mean, the whole world is going after him, and he's promising him the very symbol of the king of the world at that time. And Umar alayhi ridwanullah said to him, here, these are the 2 bracelets of Kisra. Put them in your hand and raise them high so everybody will see them. And he raised them, everybody actually saw them, and then he told him, now give them back. Of course, he's not giving. The Prophet promised him to wear them. He didn't promise that they will be yours. Of course, those belong to the Muslims. So he took them back, alayhi ridwanullah. Meanwhile, the Muslims basically kept on chasing after Yazdajard, and Umar basically, and after consulting with the Sahaba, they believed that so long as Yazdajard actually is there, then they will not be able to defeat the Persian Empire. So that's why the focus was on him, and he kept on running from one place to the other, basically, and the Muslims kept on going afterward, basically with very little resistance. Yani after the defeat of Al-Qadisiyah, then this was basically what broke the back of the Persian Empire. Afterward, everything else became easy. Just like the Battle of Al-Yarmouk that defeated the Romans was really the major turning point. After the Romans were defeated in Al-Yarmouk, then everything else actually became achievable, and so actually it happened in Al-Qadisiyah. So the Muslims kept on moving further. I'm going to move very quickly, inshallah, to cover more, including the city of Tikrit. What was the city of Tikrit known for? Now, what? Yes, Saddam Hussein, of course, was born in Tikrit, you know. So they conquered Tikrit and they kept on actually marching further and further. And then Sa'd alayhi ridwanillah, he sent Salman ibn al-Farisi and Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, and he told them that to choose a place in Iraq, basically, that will be an easier station, an easier base for that. And for that, they chose actually the place called, that became later known as Al-Kufa, which was at that time almost like a barren land. So that's why the agreement or the request is to plan that city. So that's why the whole city was planned and was divided in a way, in a modern way at that time. And it became one of the capitals of the Muslim Khilafah at that time. And Umar alayhi ridwanillah did the same thing in Al-Basra. So Kufa and Al-Basra became like two major cities in Al-Iraq. And the attack actually kept on going. And one of their leader, his name is Al-Hurmuzan, and that will come later on. Basically, that every time they will have an agreement with him, he will break the agreement. So they conquered the place that he was leading, and he will tell them, okay, now give me truce, peace, you know, and then after that, I'll give you whatever you want. And they will give him that, but then as soon as they turn their back, he will attack again. And he kept on repeating that many places, until the last, basically, stronghold that he had was a place called Tustur, that the Muslims basically surrounded. They had a siege actually of that place, and they could not penetrate. They could not basically break in. And it lasted for some time until actually somebody from inside came out and he told them that I know the way that you can actually get in. That there's some kind of a water tunnel underground, and this actually leads directly into the inside. So this is the only way that you can get in. I mean, underground, who's going to go in there? That's when Al-Bara ibn Malik alayhi ridwanillah said, I will swim underground and go inside. Al-Bara ibn Malik alayhi ridwanillah, he did something similar to that, if you remember, in an earlier instance, during the Khilafah of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq alayhi ridwanillah. Anybody remembers? Something not much different from that. In the Battle of Al-Yamama, against Musaylim al-Khattab and Banu Hanifa, when they had a siege. Give you more? Yes, Abdurrahman. Allah barak feek. You know, when they had, basically the people of Banu Hanifa surrounded themselves, they enclosed themselves in their own fortress, and the Muslims couldn't get in. The only way they could get in if somebody opens from the inside, and that's impossible. That's when the same Al-Bara ibn Malik, he asked, there were like 100,000 soldiers inside. He asked the Muslims, throw me inside, lift me and throw me inside. Are you insane? Are you crazy? Throw you to 100,000. And he said, throw me inside and let me take care of it. And they did. They threw him inside and he kept on fighting. Of course, I mean, how many people can you serve? He's not fighting the 100,000, whoever can be around him. And he was wounded, but he kept on getting closer and closer to the gate until he opened it. And the same thing happened in here. He swam underground until he was able to get in. And of course, he kept on fighting until he opened, but he was killed in the process. But he did open the gates to the Muslims. And the Muslims at that time were able actually to enter, to conquer that land. And Al-Hurmuzan fell captive in the hand of the Muslim, the one who betrayed so many agreements and so many treaties with the Muslims. And he said to them that they wanted to kill him for what he did. He said that I accept whatever your leader Omar decides. So I will submit. I will do it willingly. Whatever your leader Omar submit or decides, I will submit to that. Of course, they like that idea. Omar alayhi ridwanillah, you know, the most wise, the most just. So they sent him all the way to Medina with an interpreter, and he was wearing, of course, the nice, great clothes. And he kept on looking for Umar alayhi ridwanillah, this great, the one who was leading basically an attack on both superpowers at that time, winning easily and big, the one who controls the whole world pretty much. So how did that great mighty leader look like? And he kept on looking for him until he found basically a man looking like almost like a homeless, yani, of course, you know, he was the greatest alayhi ridwanillah, sleeping basically on the street, somewhere on the side, on the street. And he said, it's him? This is it? You know, and he said that this cannot be the person, cannot be in a way a normal human being. This has to be a prophet. They said to him, no, he's not a prophet, but he acts like prophets do. In a way, the same wisdom and all of that. And Umar alayhi ridwanillah, as soon as he woke up, and he saw him, and they told him this was Al-Hurmuzan, and he said, Alhamdulillah, alladhi adalla bil-Islam hada wa ashbaha. He says, Alhamdulillah, that Allah, you know, humiliated through Islam people like this. You know, that's how he started. And he said, take all of those nice, great clothings off of him and let him wear something more, humble. And Umar alayhi ridwanullah, and he said to him that, كيف رأيت عاقبة الغدر? How did you see the result of all of these betrayal and stabbing in the back once after another? And Al-Hurmuzan told him that you defeated us in Al-Jahiliyyah before Islam, or he said in Islam, you defeated us, or we defeated you by our unity and by your division. But now that you became Muslim, then God is on your side, so you defeated us. So Umar alayhi ridwan, and he said, what is your excuse? Umar asked him, what is your excuse for breaking so many agreements one after the other? And Al-Hurmuzan said that, Ya Umar, I'm afraid that you might kill me. I can't speak. I'm so terrified. I'm so scared. And Umar alayhi ridwan said that basically you have the protection. Well, actually what he said, I need some water. He said, I need some water to drink because I'm so tense. I'm so shivering. And he wanted to drink, but he said, I'm sorry, just, okay, let me go back. So he said that he was so afraid of Umar alayhi ridwanullah, and he said, I'm so scared, I need to drink. And he said, bring him some water. And he said, I'm afraid of drinking, you might kill me. And Umar alayhi ridwanullah told him that we will not kill you until you finish drinking. So the man said, okay, then I'm not drinking anymore. He threw the water away. What is that supposed to mean? That's it. You said you won't kill me until I drink, and I'm not going to drink. And Umar got very upset. He says, are you trying to trick me? I'm going to kill you. And then Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anh, he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's right. He said, you said to him, you will not kill him until he drinks. And he did not drink. So he has the safety and the protection. And Umar got very upset, and he says, Wallahi, I will not be tricked by the one who killed al-Bara ibn Malik. I will not be tricked by anyone except a Muslim. Then Hurmuzan said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That's it. I'm a Muslim now. And Umar alayhi ridwanullah accepted that from him. Subhanallah, despite everything, but that's it. Ibn Abbas alayhi ridwanullah used to say that everybody used to be so afraid of Umar. Wallah, I have his key. I know how to control him. All I have to do is remind him of a verse from the Quran or a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and that will change him totally. This is what the Prophet said, لَيْسَ الشَّدِيدُ بِالسُّرَعَةِ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّدِيدَ الَّذِي يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. The truly strong person is not the one that can knock people down, can bring them down. The Prophet says the truly strong person is the one that maintains his self-control when he's angry. And Umar was the perfect example of that. Despite the fact that he does get angry very easily, but he maintains actually all of his control. Meanwhile, again, the conquest continued in the area of Persia, and I'm going to jump over that directly into what happened actually in the area of Bilad al-Sham, what happened on the Roman front. So basically with that, the Persian Empire was defeated and was finished, and everything actually was in the hands of the Muslim. Meanwhile, at the same time, something else was happening actually on the other front, which is that of Bilad al-Sham in the year 13 after the Hijrah. So what was happening actually at that time, and we said that the biggest defeat, what really broke the back of the Roman Empire, was the Battle of Al-Yarmouk, which happened basically first in the Khilafah, started in the Khilafah of Abu Bakr radiyallahu through the Khilafah of Omar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh, first under the leadership of Khalid bin Walid, then Abu Ubaidah Amir ibn Jarrah, the Amin of this ummah, as the Prophet ﷺ nicknamed him. So after the Yarmouk, then the Muslims basically had control over most of that region. The Romans basically went or ran away to a place in the north called Fihl, as well as in Damascus. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to liberate it and to give it, inshallah, peace and freedom. So they went to Damascus. Abu Ubaidah alayhi ridwanullah, he asked Umar, where do I start? North or toward Damascus? And Umar alayhi ridwanullah basically asked him to go and start with Damascus. So then, at that time, Abu Ubaidah Amir ibn Jarrah, basically, he marched toward Damascus from the south, and he asked Khalid bin Walid to come from the north. So they were coming from both places. The bulk of the army was with Abu Ubaidah Amr ibn Jarrah, and a small battalion, maybe with Khalid bin Walid alayhi ridwanullah, from the north. And the conquest or the siege of Damascus lasted for 70 days. And then one night after that, they heard something strange. What happened is that the Roman leader of people that are actually in Damascus, he was the one leading Damascus, had a baby boy. And it was for him an occasion to celebrate, and everybody was happy, everybody should celebrate, and everybody got drunk. So everybody was busy really at that time. And this was a moment of weakness basically for the protection of that. Then Khalid alayhi ridwanullah from the north, then he started basically putting the different ladders and the different ways, and he was able with his force, over a few of them, to climb over the fortress, and they entered. Meanwhile, of course, and they started basically fighting their way through the city. The leader, the Roman leader of the city, heard of that, so he sent directly to Abu Ubaidah Amir al-Jarrah, who was the great commander of the Muslim forces in the south, and he accepted to surrender Damascus to them. So here we have two forces coming from two different directions. Khalid bin Walid alayhi ridwanullah from the north, basically conquering by force, and then Abu Ubaidah entering peacefully. That's why they said the only city that was basically entered or conquered in two different ways, by force and peacefully, was Damascus, as was described. Then Abu Ubaidah Amr al-Jarrah ridwanullah sent the command to Khalid bin Walid that we accept the peaceful entry. So that's it. Stop fighting and then come and join us. And then with that, they were able basically to enter that, and that became in the hand of the Muslims. Meanwhile, the other cities started basically surrendering to the Muslims one after the other. You have Bisan, you have Tabaraya as well in Palestine, and also Hama in Syria. Ladiqiyah was conquered actually by force, and they kept on moving further and further. Until actually the news came to Abu Ubaidah Amr al-Jarrah, until actually the army of the Muslims at that time started marching toward Jerusalem. And the leader of those forces was at that time actually Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu. And then before they entered, then the Christian leader actually of Jerusalem, he told him that we have in our book that a great mighty leader will be coming. Will be coming actually, and then we will surrender the city to no one but to him, without any fighting. And he was described in some of our scriptures as named Amir, Amar, Umar, and he started giving, no tashkil, just Ayn, Mim, Am, and Ra. And of course, the one who was leading the forces at that time was Amr ibn al-As. And he said to him, that's me. How do you spell your name? How do you spell Amr? How do you spell Amr? Ayn, Mim, Ra? Ayn, Mim, Ra, wow. So there's an added letter. So he said, no, it's not you. You have an extra letter in there. And of course, they thought immediately of Omar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. Then he said, I will accept no one, or I will surrender to no one except to him. And they sent immediately for Omar bin Khattab alayhi ridwanullah. And Omar alayhi ridwanullah, then he came with one person, one companion, and they had like one animal. That's it. Both of them coming all the way from Medina. Here's the great mighty king coming with one camel, or alternating. Once he would ride, Umar would ride, once his servant will ride. And they will alternate and they will talk with each other. So he will not, hey, I'm the leader, I should take, no, subhanAllah, this was Umar alayhi ridwanullah. And when he reached basically the gate or on the outskirts of Jerusalem, then some of the Sahaba went to meet him, Abu Ubaidah, Khalid, Amr ibn al-As, Shurahbil ibn Hasana, and they were really dressed nicely, very nicely. And Umar, he said, subhanAllah, how quickly the world or this dunya has changed you, has corrupted you. What are you wearing? You forgot what you wear, then suddenly you're wearing this. And they told him that, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we only wear them to impress these people. That these people in that region, they like appearances. We still do. They like these things. So we wear them to impress them, in that regard. But Umar ﷺ was not, of course, he's not the person that was taking to that. And he made a famous statement. He said that I wish somebody else said it. He said, نحن قوم أعزنا الله بالإسلام. He says, we are people that were dignified by Islam. Whichever other way we seek dignity, Allah will only increase us in humiliation. SubhanAllah. This was Umar alayhi ridwanullah. That's how great he was. So he entered, And he met that person, the leader, actually the Christian leader of Jerusalem. And as soon as he saw him, he knew that this was the one. He was the person. You know, his charisma, his kindness, his gentleness. And as he was visiting with him, Omar was visiting with that Christian leader in the church, in the major church, Kanisat al-Qiyamah, the resurrection church. I don't know what it's called, the Holy Sepulchre, I think that's what it's called in English. But anyway, it was time to pray Asr, I think. It was time for them to pray Asr. So the leader, the Christian leader, asked Omar that, why don't you pray here in the church? You can pray. And of course, you know, as a Muslim, you can pray anywhere. And Omar alayhi refused to do that. And he said, I will not pray inside the church, because I'm afraid that if I pray inside the church, there will be some Muslims who will come after me, and they will convert the church into a mosque. I don't want that to happen. SubhanAllah, thinking way ahead. This is how permissive. He says, no, I will not pray inside the church. I will pray outside. And he went and he prayed on the steps that lead to the church. But still at the same time, he said, but yet I'm writing that you cannot call adhan in this place. And you cannot have salat al-jama'ah in this place. In other words, you cannot have a Muslim prayer in that place. Again, to make sure that no Muslims in the future, out of the love of Umar, will come and convert that place into a mosque. Not even the steps that lead into the church. And of course, the person, of course, was really impressed by that. And Umar asked him, is there a place where we can actually pray? And he told him that there's that place of the Sakhra. And of course, the Sakhra, that land, that area, is the end of Al-Isra and the beginning of Al-Mi'raj. The land where the Isra ended, and from which Al-Mi'raj has started, of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And he told him, actually, this is basically the rock where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Yaqub. So anyway, and Umar alayhi then he himself started basically cleaning the place until they were able to establish the first place for prayer actually in the Muslims in that place. It is the Sakhra where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Yaqub. And then something actually happened not long afterward, which is in the year 18 after the Hijrah, which is the plague of Amwas. Ta'un Amwas. Umar alayhi after that, he returned basically to Medina, and he wanted to take another visit to visit that area, and this was in the year 18. And after he passed Tabuk, which is actually in Jordan, then the news came that their plague, called the plague of Amwas, started spreading in that area. Then Umar thought, should I go further or should I stop? Then some of the Sahaba alayhim ridwanillah, especially the early Muhajirin, and he used to consult with them all the time, the early immigrant that migrated with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, they told him that, no, do not go further. And Umar alayhi ridwanillah said, I'm not going to go further. And Abu Ubaidah alayhi ridwanillah told him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, tafirru min qadarillah, are you running away from the qadar of Allah, the decree of Allah? And Umar alayhi ridwanillah said, لو غيرك قالها يا أبا عبيدة, that I wish somebody else said it. He says, yes, نفر من قدر الله إلى قدر الله. We escape one of the decree of Allah to another decree of Allah. And he told him, if you have a flock of sheep, and you have two patches, one that is completely barren, one that is very lush and green and succulent, where do you take your flock? He says, I'll take it to the green. And he says, that's part of the qadr of Allah. That's why I think sometimes, we misunderstand the concept of al-qadr. We feel that you have to sit and do nothing. The Sahaba alayhi did not sit and did nothing. Umar alayhi himself, he said, it doesn't mean that you have to sit and wait for the sky to rain gold and silver. That's why you can say that sometimes ignorance can be part of the qadr of Allah, and it is treated by education which becomes part of the qadr of Allah. That's why, anger can be part of the qadr of Allah if you're angry, if a person is angry by nature, but self-control and self-discipline can control that, and it becomes part of the qadr of Allah. So being the qadr of Allah, it doesn't mean waiting for everything to happen by itself. I mean, if you have basically a key in here, a knob, you can't say it's going to open by the qadr of Allah. You have to put the key, and you have to put the proper key. You cannot bring your car key and put it in there. It has to be the proper key, and that becomes actually part of the qadr of Allah. And of course, shortly after that, Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu came and he told him that I heard the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam saying that if you find out that there's a plague in a certain land, then do not enter it. So some kind of a quarantine, basically do not enter that. And Umar alayhi ridwanillah was happy with that. And then shortly after that, of course, there was a big problem with the plague happening, especially with the area of al-mawarith, of inheritance. where basically sometimes some people, die, and before basically their inheritance is divided, then their own inheritors die. That's when Umar alayhi ridwanullah used to take charge of that himself. And as he was moving actually in that expedition, he stopped in a place called Al-Jabiyah, actually, in Al-Julan. And at that time, seeing the victory and the greatness of Islam and the Muslims, then they started remembering the days of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And Bilal ibn Rabah alayhi ridwanullah was with them. Bilal alayhi ridwanullah stopped making adhan after the Prophet died. After the Prophet died, he did not make adhan to anybody. And then at that time when the Sahaba were present and Bilal was with them, then they asked Omar alayhi ridwanullah, why don't you ask Bilal to make adhan for us, so we can remember the days of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And he insisted on Bilal. They said that Bilal started making the adhan until he reached Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and he stopped. He could not. They said that he tried several times. You cannot go past that word. SubhanAllah, remembering the days of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And then before Umar alayhi ridwanullah returned back, then Amr ibn al-As came to him and he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, how can we leave out Egypt? Of course, Egypt was inhabited by 2 million people at that time. So it was big, at that time. So how can we leave Egypt? So Umar ibn Khattab alayhi ridwanullah said to him basically, you go further, and do not basically do anything until, march toward Egypt, but wait for a message to come from me. And Amr ibn al-As alayhi ridwanullah moved toward Egypt with an army of 4,000. And as he was moving toward Egypt, then Umar ibn Khattab alayhi ridwanullah sent him a messenger. And in that message, basically, he was telling him something. I will tell you what it was. Amr ibn al-As alayhi ridwanullah, he heard that there was a messenger coming from Umar. So he started rushing toward Egypt before the messenger catches up with him. And he kept on moving quickly, and the messenger is following him. Wait, I have a message for you. And Amr ibn al-As would not listen to him. And he did not stop until he actually entered the land of Egypt. And then the messenger came to him, here, this message from Umar ibn Khattab alayhi ridwanullah. He opened the message and Umar told him that if you have not reached Egypt yet, then come back. If you have reached Egypt, then go further. Go forth. So he knew, subhanAllah. Amr al-As was very shrewd, was very smart. So he sent back to Umar ibn Khattab, Ya Amir al-Mu'min, we are already in Egypt. Too late. We need support. So Umar ibn Khattab alayhi ridwanullah sent him an army of, 4,000. And he said, I'm sending you an army of 8,000. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4,000. And Umar told him, I'm sending you an army of 4,000. With them are 4 men. Each one of them is worth 1,000. And these were al-Muqdad alayhi ridwanullah, Ubadah ibn al-Samit, Muhammad ibn Muslima, and Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. So he told him that, so now you have 12,000. You have these 4 that are 4,000, 4,000 soldiers, and you already have 4, so you have 12,000. And the Prophet ﷺ has told us that 12,000 will never be defeated because of their few numbers. So go ahead, you don't have any excuse. And of course he marched and he was able basically to conquer Egypt very easily. And with that, basically Egypt came under the Khilafah of the Muslims. And inshallah we'll continue next week. We'll wrap up inshallah the Khilafah next month, And we'll wrap up the Khilafah of Umar. And we'll talk about how he died, and we'll get into a very troubled period, which is the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan, and then that of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu. Walhamdulillah rabbil alameen. In Egypt, mostly it was the Copts. They were the Aqbat. The Muqawqis was the leader of the Egypt, And mostly it was them. They were the one leading, and there were some Romans as well. And it says actually even the Romans were largely mistreating. That's why many of the Egyptian areas basically submitted to the Muslims, because the way the Romans were treating them was really badly. And of course, most of them became Muslims. Wallahi, some people have said that it's some kind of an ethnicity, or at least, defined as such. But it is a religion. They were Christian. It's a branch of Christianity. Wallahi, I don't have much information about that. I don't have. SubhanAllah, you can say the same thing, by the way, the same question about, everybody in that region. You have, of course, Lebanese, we claim to be Phoenicians, The Syrian claim to be, I don't know, the Iraqis, Babylonians, and whatnot, But the Prophet ﷺ, he defined who's considered to be a Arab. And he says, إِنَّمَا الْعَرَبِيَّةُ اللِّسَانِ, that the Arab is the one that speaks, so it's not an ethnicity. So anyway, they were all Arabs at that time, based on that definition. And of course, most of them became Muslim later on. But however, some of them remained Christians and Jews and whatnot, which shows you that Islam was not imposed upon the people. If Islam was imposed on the people, you wouldn't have Aqbat until today in Egypt. If Islam was imposed on the people, you wouldn't have Christians in Lebanon until today. That's why Islam was not imposed as a religion. People kept the religion. That's why they kept on actually even thriving in certain areas, like in Lebanon, for many, many generations, even till today, And of course, because there's no compulsion in religion. You cannot impose it. The religion has to come from the inside. See, the bracelet is like saying, for example, today, like the crown of the Queen of England. Something like that. So these were two, bracelets that the king of Kisra used to wear, the king of Persia. Whoever was, Kisra is not a name. Kisra is like saying the Caesar, for example. So whoever was the Caesar or the Kisra of Persia would wear these bracelets. It's like they pass it from queen to queen. They pass it from Kisra to Kisra. So they were like the symbol of their kingdomship. And here the Prophet ﷺ being chased in his migration, and yet he's promising that very symbol of strength of Kisra. Yeah, Suraqa, how do you feel about wearing the bracelets of Kisra? That's what it was. No, well, see, that's the thing. The question is, let me repeat the question. It's a good question. Assalamu alaikum. So what he's saying is that, that Umar al-Khattab basically blamed them that why would you wear clothes, nice clothes like that to impress them? Why would Umar be upset about that? What's wrong with impressing them? Umar has a different standard. Now, this, of course, not to say that this is haram. It doesn't say that it's haram, But anyway, Umar had higher standard than everybody else. So he said to them, this is not how you impress them. Basically, that's really what he's saying. But it doesn't say that it's haram. Actually, the Prophet ﷺ used to say, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ أَن يُرَى أَثَرَ نِعْمَتِهِ عَلَى عَبْدِهِ, that Allah likes to see the signs of His blessings on His servant. So even though Umar has chosen to go that, how should I say, the poorer route, but there were some rich Sahaba alayhim ridwanullah. Abu Bakr was one of them. Abu Bakr, was well off. Of course, Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu. So there's nothing wrong with dressing up nicely or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. Because one of the Sahaba came to the Prophet and he told him that, Ya Rasulullah, that one of us likes to look good, like to dress nicely, do nice hair, whatever it is. And he said to him that Allah likes to see the signs of His blessings on His servant. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is when it becomes something that we consider what defines us, that what defines me is my appearance, and that becomes a problem there at that time. Yes. When the Prophet ﷺ sent the message to Al-Muqawqas Adim al-Qibt, and he told him, basically giving him the same message that he sent to all the kings, but the Muqawqas didn't accept Islam, actually. And he sent him basically his physician, and he sent him Maria al-Qibtiyya alayha ridwanillah. But yes, Islam was introduced at that time. You're right, absolutely right. But Islam, was not maybe adopted probably until later on. But as you said, the interesting thing is that he was alternating writing, writing, with his servant. And by the time actually he reached Jerusalem, it was his turn to walk, on mud and everything. So there's no way anybody actually could have guessed that he's Amir al-Mu'mineen, alayhi ridwanullah. Wallahi, I know quite a few books, but I know them actually in Arabic. That's the problem. What? Al-Rahiq al-Makhtum is a seerah book, is about the seerah, But there is actually, what? Yes, but there is actually the book of al-Buti, Muhammad Sa'id Ramadan al-Buti. It's called Fiqh al-Seerah. What he does in the beginning of the book, he focuses on the lessons from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. And toward the end, an added part of the book, he goes over the Khilafah al-Rashida, the guided Khilafah, and he talks briefly about the events of the fitna. And that could be a good book for that. Wallahi, for the Arabic sources, you have many of them. You have Tariq al-Tabari, but even better than that, there's the Islamic history, Tariq al-Islami by Mahmoud Shakir. And there's Huqba min al-Tariq that talks about specifically that troubled period. And there were writings by Sheikh al-Sallabi as well that were really great. And he's known to be actually an authority on that particular topic. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاكم الله خير والحمد لله رب العالمين.